Make HR easy with MyHR. Go to myhr.works to find out how.
Yesterday, we featured Tony Abbott's speech in London this week, suggesting if he had his time again, he would not have signed the China free trade deal. He was the man who signed it on behalf of Australia. He was Prime Minister. Australia had indulged in wishful thinking, he said, in believing China would become more like us. I think it's been a hell of a wake-up call. I can't imagine Australia and China would contemplate concluding a deal today. So what about us? We thought we'd ring around a few Prime Ministers. Three of them didn't respond. Clark didn't respond, Shipley didn't respond, English didn't respond, but two did. One of them was John Key. Morning.
Morning, Mike.
What do you make of what Abbott said, and are you surprised?
Not terribly surprised. I've actually heard him speak on the topic some time ago, and he's pretty negative on China, but I just don't agree with that. I mean, look, here's the reality. That firstly, he seems to be arguing, well, signing the FTA was a leader into China becoming a democracy. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe that's a reform that happens sometime, but seriously, do you think the Department of Foreign Affairs in Australia, DFAT, would have been telling Tony Abbott that in a 6-year period, China would be moving to democracy? Not a chance, right? Then you look at it and you say, well, this is about trade. Okay, let's look at the facts. From 1995 to 2005, exports out of Australia to China were 20 billion on average. 2005 to 15, they're 50 billion. Now, for the last decade, they're over 100 billion. So, yeah, Australia is more exposed to China and therefore more at risk to tariffs and bans and the sort of things that have been going on because the relationship has actually deteriorated between China and Australia in recent times. But still, by all economic measures, if you accept the view that exports underpin jobs and opportunities, DFAT would be telling Australia to sign an FTA.
So that is what a trade deal is, and that's what we've got to understand it to be. In other words, it is business, and it's about the bottom line, how they behave, who they are, who you are and they are, whether you get on or not. That's all secondary to the dollars.
Well, first and foremost, yeah, they are the capacity for your companies to export goods and services with lower barriers to entry. You know, less tariffs, less rigmarole at the border, all of that kind of stuff. Now, does that mean that, it doesn't allow you, for instance, to make comments on the domestic policy of those countries? No, it doesn't stop you doing that. We have, for a very long time, had a relationship with China. If you think about New Zealand, when we always talk as prime ministers when we travel to their country about what's called the four firsts. So, for instance, we were the first country to support China's ascendancy into WTO and to recognise the market economy and actually to have a free trade agreement with a westernised country. And actually, I think first to have one for all parts of one China, which our government did with Taiwan and Hong Kong. But, the issues around the Uyghurs or around China's sovereignty rights around Hong Kong and Taiwan, all of these different issues, the South China Sea, all of those things get debated in the same way, by the way, that we would debate with the United States, for instance, whether we think they should have the death penalty and whether we think they should have gun control laws like they have.
I appreciate your time. So John Key, former Prime Minister, of course, 20 minutes away from 8. Also with us and listening in is former Prime Minister Jim Bolger. Morning to you.
Good morning.
What's your view?
Well, broadly similar to John's, I think that Tony Abbott putting forward the proposition that he thought that China would become more like us, Australia. I don't believe he thought that. I don't believe he was so naive. I was never his great supporter, but that would be naivety in big capital letters that China that's been there for thousands of years, 1.4 billion people were going to copy little Australia. Yeah, grow up.
Is there some hint in what he's trying to say, maybe not as overtly, that the way China's behaving in the world today is not what we would have anticipated, and therefore when you go back to what they looked like then and what they look like now, they're two different countries?
I think there's genuine and real grounds to be very concerned about what's happening to the Uyghur people in China and what you can read in the public media, and that's my only source. And I have to say, I think those issues should be raised with China. I think if a country like New Zealand and or Australia, if it had a relationship with China, much better positioned to argue those issues up front with the Chinese and saying we don't like what's happening to the Uyghur people. We want them to have a reasonable opportunity like the rest of the people of China. So engage with them, argue with them strongly, but don't sort of walk away or have some dream world that they're just going to follow Australia.
Are we too beholden to them now?
We've got very large market requirements in China, and that is a weakness. But we only sell, our exporters only sell to where they can get the best market opportunity. And I don't think we're too beholden, but we wouldn't want to be more beholden. I mean, we had this problem back with Great Britain and the dumps when they went into the EU. And now they've dumped the EU and want to try and get trade agreements with New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, that'll respond. So I think that we just have to be careful in that spot. I think that the current Foreign Minister, Nanaia Mahuta, is managing to walk very carefully along this line, and I congratulate her on that.
Good stuff. Appreciate your time. Good to catch up. Jim Bolger with us and Sir John Key this morning.